Hello, beautiful people. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you what I read in February. Wasn't a big reading month for me, which I will get into in a little bit. But if you are new here, hello, I am April. You can think of me as your fairy bookish godmother. My goal on this channel is to set you up with your next 5-star read. And these are just a few of the books that live rent-free in my head. If you like what you see, click subscribe, hit the bell, stay a while. Before we dive in, I think there are only like 5 books on this list and I own none of them. So I listened to these on audiobook or I read them on my Kobo. That's just how this month happened. I think the reason that I read so few books in February is because I had just had my bariatric surgery very end of January. So I was in recovery mode. Lots of getting adjusted to a new way of living. And also the Oscars happened in early March. And so I was also trying to watch a bunch of Oscar nominated movies. So yes, didn't read a ton, read some good ones. We are going to go in order of like least likely to recommend to you to most likely to recommend to you. So the first book I want to talk to you about is Crossroads. This follows a woman whose son dies in a terrible car crash. I believe it's been a couple of years since he passed away, and she is very much still struggling. Her ex-husband has like moved on. He had moved on a while before. They divorced a while earlier before her son passed away. But her ex-husband has kids. They're in pretty good contact with one another. She'll sometimes even go over to his house and, you know, spend some time with the kids, chat with the new wife, and have dinner, that kind of thing. But she's very much isolated in her little world. In this book, something happens that makes her start seeing her son outside her window at night. And she is doing everything in her power to keep him on this plane. Very much a book about grief. I think this book was very much an ode to Pet Sematary by Stephen King. I will say that I didn't feel like there was a new enough spin on this. I didn't really feel a spin at all. And I definitely preferred Pet Sematary by Stephen King, and I'm not a King fan. I'm not a big King fan. So it was okay, but I probably wouldn't like press this into your hands. The next book I want to chat with you about is Annie Bot. Oh, I actually own this and can show it to you. I completely forgot that I had this book. Annie Bot follows literally a bot, a female bot that has consciousness. We've gotten to a place in the world where we can create robots for specific purposes. Now, Annie Bot has been made for companionship for a man, and she has to do anything she can to please him in every way, shape, and form. That said, she goes in for regular updates with the company that created her, and they're very, very impressed with how she's doing, and keep a close eye on her in the hopes that she can, you know, pave the way for future bots. I personally liked the exploration of what women's roles are in the world. What are we for? So much of the time, women can feel like the male gaze is most important, and so much of the time the male gaze presses itself upon us as women, and we feel that we need to look a certain way for men. We need to act a certain way for men. All of these things are explored in here, of course, via a female bot. I think I would have liked to see a bit more of a feminist slant on this, to the point of like maybe seeing this robot truly not caring about what her owner wants, or something along those lines. And I don't feel like it went far enough in this book. I also found that there was too much sex in this book. Like, we all know that this Annie bot has been created for male pleasure and all of that. So I knew that there was going to be some of it, but there was so much of it in the book that I find that stuff boring. I know that's probably weird for a lot of people, but I find it boring to read about. I also found it went on a little too long, and this is not a really long book. It's like, what, just around over 200 pages, but it felt long. So I wasn't overly impressed. I'd like to see this kind of book done again, this kind of concept done again, but a bit more of a feminist spin on it. But yeah, it was just okay. Next, I read The Briar Club by Kate Quinn. I read this on my Kobo and really enjoyed it. This takes place in the 50s during the McCarthy era. We follow a group of women who live together, I believe in Washington. I'm trying to remember where they lived, what city it was. Somewhere in America in the 1950s. And we follow a group of women who live together in a house. It's pretty much temporary housing. There is a landlady that lives there with her teenage son and her daughter, her younger daughter. And then there's, I think, something like 5 or 6 women who have rented rooms. And when a new woman rents one of the upstairs rooms, named Grace, she kind of brings this whole house together. She starts having dinner parties in her little room. She's very inviting, and we start to get to know these women, and they start to get to know each other. One thing I really enjoyed about this book is that you begin with the narrator being the Briar house itself. So the house itself is narrating a scene in which a murder has taken place. You know that there are 2 bodies in the house. You don't know who they are. You don't know who killed these people. And it explores that crime through the book. But you're also then, after, getting to know each of the women who live in the house and their background stories and their current stories. And it all kind of weaves together as you go. I personally think this is the best Kate Quinn book that I have read. She has been very miss for me, like to the point where I think I stopped reading her for a while. But one of my friends, Stacy, read The Briar Club and really, really liked it. And so I thought, I'm going to give it a shot. And so I did. And I enjoyed it. I feel like I can see her writing really growing. I found her earlier books quite formulaic, and this didn't feel formulaic as much. It's definitely historical fiction, and some of that can be a little bit formulaic if you read a ton of historical fiction, but you can see that she's getting more adventurous as she's writing, and I'm really quite thrilled about that. So I will be reading more Kate Quinn. I actually just picked up another Kate Quinn at a thrift shop, so she's back in my life, guys. The next book I want to tell you about is a weird one called Victorian Psycho. This has just come out. I think it came out in February, if I'm not mistaken. And this follows a governess who has been hired on to take care of 2 children, their education, their well-being. And she has the desire to eat them, but she's promised herself she's not going to eat them. It definitely follows a woman who is off her rocker, but it's very amusing. I found it to be quite humorous as I was reading this. I listened to this on audio and enjoyed that. She's a strange character, but you also you either like her or you find her interesting enough that you want to keep an eye on her, want to follow her, but definitely dangerous. You follow her in the present day, and then you have glimpses of her past and the things that she has done in the past, which are woo, wild. I will say this is quite grotesque. There's a lot of body horror in here. There's also like violence against animals, which I would sometimes just like skip ahead because I can't do. What is it? What is wrong with me where I cannot deal with anything bad happening to an animal? A human, okay, but an animal, I don't know what it is. Although children are also harmed in here. So very much like go into this cautiously. If you are used to horror books, you'll probably be just fine. I'm used to horror books, and so I did fast forward through a little bit. And last but not least, the best book that I read in February easily was The House in the Cerulean Sea. This is worth the hype. This has been very much hyped through the years, and I don't know why it took me so long to pick this up. This follows a man who works for the government in a department in which they go and check on basically orphanages. They're checking on all sorts of kids and how they're being raised, how they are doing, what kind of education they're getting, what treatment they are getting. And this man has very much lived his life by the book. He's very good at his job, very, very good at his job, and is able to create distance between himself and the people that live there, and yet respect enough for them that they feel understood to a certain point. So a governing body calls him to their committee meeting, and they tell him that they want him to go and see a new orphanage. And at this orphanage, there are some very different kinds of kids. These kids sometimes have powers. Some of them are not human. And he's to go there, remain neutral and not get emotionally involved. And he goes there, and of course, as it goes along, he's getting more and more emotionally involved. I loved the characters in this. Definitely want to read the second book in this series. It just felt like a giant hug reading this book, especially in a time that is so negative in the world. I found this to be so positive. This is about, you know, really accepting and loving people for who they are. And it's an LGBTQ plus book. There's a lot of love stories in here that I didn't mind. And you guys know I have no heart, and yet I really enjoyed all of those love stories. It also explores our main character learning to love himself by seeing how other people love him for just being who he is, exactly how he is, and not needing to change anything about him. This is about like radical love and just open-hearted love and no rules. And Lord, we need that right now. I just think that if you're struggling with the world at this moment, maybe pick this up. I've been like watching way too much news, and I'm kind of glued to it, and it's just all been negative. And so this was just such a breath of fresh air. It was so wonderful to read this. There is still love out there. There is still love out there, and this book will make you believe in it all over again. So those are all of the books that I read in February. What did you guys read? Did you read anything good? What was the best book that you read in February? Let us know in the comments below. Everybody's going to want to know, and maybe they'll be added to my TBR. I will talk with you very soon. Hope you're doing well. Bye.